Hello and welcome to 8-1, Building Blocks of Geometry. Today our goal is that we will be able to describe figures by using the terms of geometry. So we do have quite a few key words that we need to write down today. Please make sure you get all of this written into your notebook. It tells how to name a figure, what does that figure mean? So let's go through some of this. All right, so we have a point. A point is an exact location that has no size. So we always draw a point as a little circle on there, but really that point is not a circle. It is just an exact point, no size. It is named by a capital letter, and that is it. So if I were to name this point right here, I would call it point P. I could write it out, or I could just write capital P. Okay, then we have a line. A line is a straight path that has no thickness. So again, we draw a line with a thickness, but really it has no thickness. And it extends forever. That is a line. So that we signify that by drawing two arrows on the end to show that that line goes on forever. Okay, I remember on our test we had on this last year, this was a little bit tricky part. Remembering it just goes on forever and you had to name it was a line. A line is named by 2 points on that line. So for example, this line right here has 2 points A and B. So I can name it line, capital AB, or I could just write AB with a line like this on top. It has to have an arrow on both ends to signify it's a line. Or I could go the opposite direction. I could call it line BA, or I could do like this, line BA, if we don't want to write out the word line. And lastly, we have a plane. Now a plane, again, has no thickness. We have to draw it, but really it is just a slice, no thickness. And it extends forever. A plane is named by 3 points on the plane that are not on the same line. Now, technically speaking, you could put a line here, you could put a line here, but you cannot put one line through all of these. It would not be a line because it would not be straight. So it has to be 3 points on the plane that are not on the same line. So we could call this plane capital LMN. You could call it plane MLN. Doesn't have to be in any particular order at all. Plane NLM. So make sure we get this down so we know how to write, how to format our answer. All right, let's go to the next page. Use the diagram to name each geometric figure. So here we have 2 intersecting lines. They are on one plane. So let's give these names. 3 points. Now remember, we can just name these by capital letters. So I could say point A, point C, and point E. I could just name 3 points that are on these lines, on this plane. Name 2 lines, so I know that if I'm naming a line, I have to put arrows on top of both of them. I could say line AC, and I could also say line DC. Now for lines, it doesn't matter which order you put them in, as long as those points are on the line. Now for when we're talking about rays, then that's where it matters. But lines, doesn't matter what order you put your letters. Now I need to name a point shared by 2 lines. So if we're naming a point, we just have to put a capital letter, and that would be point C. Again, we could write it out point C, or we could just write a capital C. Now we have to name our plane, so I do have to write out the word plane. And our plane I could name BDE. I wanted to try to find 3 points that were not on the same line. And if I did D, C, B, C and D are on the same line. But B is not. So if you can find 3 that are absolutely not on the same line, then you should do that. If you have to name two on the same line and one that is not, then that would be your next best choice. So anyways, let's go to the next page. Now we have two more vocabulary words. There's the word I'm looking for. Two more vocabulary words to add, and that is a line segment. So a line segment is where we took a line and we said, I want this piece right here. So I'm going to put dots on the end of each of them. So I know that I'm just using that segment of the line. That's why it's called a line segment. A line segment is a part of a line made of two endpoints and all the points between them. So we could put like lots of points between these. This case there are not any points in between it, but we could if we wanted to. All right. A line segment is named by its endpoints. Now here is how we write a line segment if we're trying to define it. We could write it all the way out, line segment XY. Or I could just write my line segment, no arrows on the ends. If you wanted to, you could put dots, but we don't need to. And then capital X, capital Y. Or I could flip the letters around. I could call it line segment YX, or I could just do YX to name my line segment. Now, array is where the order of the letters is tricky. As you can see, there's only one way to define this array. So array is a part of a line that would start, so let's say here's my line. I would pick a spot that I'm starting at, and then I'm going to go on forever in one direction. Okay, so array is a part of a line that starts at an endpoint and extends forever in one direction. Array is named by its endpoint first. That's why we need to write these down. I think if we write it into our notebook, then we really would be able to know, get a little extra practice, and we'd have something to look back at. So these two tables definitely need to get into your notebook, and I would write all the examples in your notebook too. Okay, so here's my array right here. Array is named by its endpoint first, so that means J, its endpoint, J has to always come first, and then K. So I could write this as array JK, or I could write it as array JK. Now you can notice when I wrote this, my arrow is after the K because that is where the arrow comes in our actual array. So if I were to have a array that, let's say, went this way, and this was a B, I would write it array A, B, and then I would put that arrow that way. Okay, we have to have our endpoint coming first. So it looks different because I had to kind of flip it around, but endpoint comes first, then our second one. So now let's practice. Use the diagram to give a possible name to each figure. Okay, so we want three different line segments. So I could say line segment TV. I could say line segment TU. Or I could say line segment UV for the third possible way. Three ways to name the line. So if I'm going to name this line, I would want to put arrows on the top because I am naming the line. So I could say line TU. I could say line, let's do TV again. Or I could say line UV. So I just have to pick 2 points on the line and make sure when I'm writing the name I put arrows on top of to show that it is a line. And then next we have 6 ways to name arrays. Whew, that's a lot of ways to name array. So let's start out with our array symbol on the top. I could say array TU because that would be array. If I started at T, went to U, and then went on to get forever, I could say array TV. I could say array UT because I'm going back the other way now. I could say array VT, because this one has arrows on both sides, if I started at V and went towards T and on forever, that would be up to 4. Now I could say ray UV and ray VU and on forever. There's 6. Now if you had a hard time figuring out what I was doing here, please draw out all of these so that you can see, oh yeah, I see how that one would work. Oh yeah, I see how that one would work. Okay, please make sense of this. If I went too fast, then say, Mrs. Hamer, you went too fast, and type it in there, and then say, I want to talk to you about this in the morning. Then maybe one of us can remember that we need to talk about it. Or also remember we do get partner time in the morning, and maybe your partner could help you out. Name another ray for name for ray TU. So if we started at T, went to U, and went on forever, we could also call that ray TV. It would be the same exact line. It's just we picked a different point for naming it. Same exact thing. Okay, and now that is all that I have for you today. I think the biggest thing on this is just remembering how do we write our answers. The format of our answers, I think, is the trickiest part here. So anyways, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.